Welcome back to the channel, guys. I hope you're having a great evening. And so I wanted to talk today about the Snyderverse. Is the Snyderverse back, right? Is it going to come back and be the new face of DC, right? So, I want to play some of the Snyder Cut trailer here, kind of to take us back down memory lane a little bit. I thought it looked excellent, but it's playing the song Hallelujah in it. And, YouTube's pretty crazy about music, right? Copyrighted music and stuff like that. So I decided not to play it. But um, it just reminded me just how great uh, in certain areas Zack Snyder is, right? He has his strengths. When that song Hallelujah was playing in the trailer, I thought about when he did The Watchmen, right? And for those of you who don't know, Watchmen is probably one of my single most favorite superhero uh, adaptations to film, and it was done by Zack Snyder. And where some people thought the graphic novel was better than the film, um, I love the fact that Zack Snyder just switched out, especially during the period of time the movie takes place in, like around 1985. I love that he switched out the interdimensional or the creatures from another dimension. Um, switched that out for nuclear holocaust, right? I thought those little touches, right? Those little changes, um, I thought just worked excellent, right? And so when we think about it, there's not like a single movie that Zack Snyder did that I didn't think was pretty darn good. I think the only one many agree on that they don't like was Sucker Punch. I didn't like Sucker Punch either. I could never finish Sucker Punch. I kind of liked the actress in it for some reason, but I just never liked that film, right? Um, but it just shows that Zack Snyder, he does a great job on his films. He did the Army of the Dead, right? The prequel and so on. I saw that, loved it, loved it. Uh, he is just great at many things, but many of y'all understand I didn't want them to give him Superman, even if he would have been chosen to do Batman, right? Even though I love the Matt Reeves Batman, if Zack Snyder was given Batman and he did I would have. I think he would have did a pretty darn good job with Batman. Anything but Superman. I just don't think Zack really understood Superman. Like I would want him to. And it was a big deal. You get that right, and it just wasn't his film, guys, right? But he's lately been putting out a variety of I guess photographs of you know they're old photographs of his Justice League, right? Deathstroke, Batman, Henry Cavill and stuff, right? So let's talk about this idea that these are all hints that the Snyderverse might come back, right? Let's give it a. I'm just gonna give it a full unbiased look because some people think I don't. I love Zack Snyder's work, right? They have been dogging him on Rebel Moon, which could be a problem. I even like Rebel Moon, so it just shows how much I like Zack Snyder. I don't get it twisted. I love Zack Snyder. My whole thing is don't let him do Superman. And I wish Zach would just play their strengths, and I wish he would have turned it down, right? When Christopher Nolan, I know you got to work in Hollywood and everything and so on, but I just wish he wouldn't have took the job, right? Um, I would have loved to see him create characters in DC under someone else. I think I would have liked to see Christopher Nolan's idea of Superman, right? I would have loved to see for some reason, I think Christopher Nolan would have got it, but Christopher Nolan turned it down, which was probably wise, or either he just knew he didn't get it and he just turned it down. But anyway, Zack Snyder ends up with it. Let's talk about if Zack Snyder if the Synderverse is ever coming back, right? And let's try to look at it from a non-biased point of view. So, the studios, Warner Brothers, is up for bid, right? It's up for sale. And we know that anytime there is a acquisition of a property, new management can come in, and whoever the owners are, they can do whatever they want, right? So, who are some of the people that are looking at Warner Brothers purchase that we know of? Some of them are Paramount, I believe. We have the billionaire from Oracle. His name slips me. Larry Ellis, right? And his son, who I understand to be a big movie buff guy, right? So they love films and things like that. So that could be good. That could be a good thing, right? When you got a lot of money, if you care more about the art of film than making money, and when you got as much money as these guys, maybe you get back to the art of filmmaking. And I hope that's the idea behind it, right? I hope it's not just the money making thing. So if the Ellises take over, you could potentially get a good studio thing going on. If Paramount takes over and some of the big wigs, you probably gonna be looking for bottom dollar. And then you have Netflix, right? The streaming service Netflix that's been doing original movies, and they have a relationship with Zack Snyder. So if Netflix buys Warner Brothers, does that mean then that Zack Snyder's back in? And maybe that's why we're seeing all these hints that the Snyderverse could come back, right? So what are some of the issues with if Netflix takes over, which out of the studios would probably be the best chance for the Snyderverse to come back? Well, some people are saying one of the big issues would be the failure of Rebel Moon, right? In other words, Rebel Moon cost a lot of money. It was supposed to go into this big franchise thing, and I loved it. I liked Rebel Moon, right? I'm not saying that it was the, for original, type Netflix done movie. I'm not saying that it was the best movie in the world, but it was interesting, right? And I liked that it was something different, right? Because nobody, and a lot of people say, well, it's just a version of Star Wars. No, I thought it was its own thing. I thought it had hints of certain Star Wars elements with their kind of Empire thing going on. But, all in all, I thought it was a darn, a pretty thing, a thing of its own. And I thought it was decent, right? I thought it was decent for that. And I would have liked to see more of it. But it didn't, to get more subscribers for Netflix, some believe, just didn't hit for the cost of the thing, it didn't achieve what, they were hoping it would achieve. And so some believe that may have hurt Zack's relationship with Netflix. In addition to that, you also have just the Justice League itself, right, and the whole DC thing, right, with his bottom, we're not making the bottom dollar, right. Obviously, the fact that it didn't go on, meant that it must have not achieved the numbers that they were hoping the property could achieve, right? So, would it be logical for them to dig up something that they deem to be a failure, right? Probably not, right? It's probably not going to be a direction the studios are going to want to go in. My belief is they'll probably either want to either go forward, right, or keep what they got. Now, before the Snyderverse, the Snyder Bros gives up, there is one last chance, I believe, left so all is not gone yet, right? There is one last hope left for the Snyderverse, and it might be the very last one. It might actually be the very, very last hope they have. And what is that? That is that Warner Brothers never gets sold, right? That could happen, and it could somewhat continue to be business as usual, right? And if that's the case, then you would still be left with James Gunn. Now, why is that good if you're still left with James Gunn? Well, the reason that's good is James Gunn and Zack Snyder do still have a good working relationship. Looks like they have a friendship. And what you could end up with possibly, right, possibly is some elements of the Snyderverse existing within what James Gunn has going on in the Gunverse. And the reason I'm saying that is because we know that they're experimenting with these various dimensions and other worlds and things like that, right? It is not impossible that some other universe could be a universe where the Snyderverse exists, so they could kind of be preserved in that way. So you might have Henry Cavill's version of Superman. You might have all these other characters that have already existed. And you know what, to be fair, and the reason I would like to see some of the Snyderverse characters make it over, to be fair, right, I don't think every character in the Snyderverse is bad, right? I think they could exist alongside. And I'll tell you one character that would be great for James Gunn's type of element of film he does that could even maybe cross over into his universe and be a character in his DC, and that is people like The Flash, right? Instead of getting another Wonder Woman, I thought Gal Gadot did such a great job, right? That, you know, you could have her still as Wonder Woman. You could still have Ezra Miller as The Flash, right? You know, even though it is craziness, but his zany sense of humor, I think, works with James Gunn a good deal. You could have, you know, all those various elements, what the Flash director did. Because a lot of people, you know, by the way, the Flash director is, what is he doing? Is he doing the next Batman, I believe? Right? Which one is he doing? The guy who directed the Flash and the Flash wasn't a terrible movie, right? Yeah, I agree. The CGI, all that stuff they did at the end, showing the various dimensions was crazy. It looked crappy, but the idea of the story I didn't think was bad at all. But anyway, you could introduce a lot of those various people through the multiverse that belong to the Snyderverse, right? And the Snyderverse doesn't go extinct. And I would be fine with that, right? I would be fine with that. I didn't think that Zack Snyder, what he did, the work he did was terrible at all. There were a lot of choices I didn't like he did, but the movie itself, there were elements of the work he's done that wasn't bad. You know, it wasn't bad. It just wasn't a Superman. Like if Superman, like if he did the Justice League and Superman wasn't a part of it, I think I would have been fine with it. My only hang up with him was pretty much Superman and Lex Luthor, right? Those elements. Everything else, I probably could have rolled with it, right? And it wasn't that Henry Cavill was a great Superman as well. It was the choices and the directing and the writing that they chose to go with those characters, right? And we don't have to rehash that. We already know what those things are. And so I had one more point about why the Snyderverse might not return. And it slipped my mind now. It was something very important as to why I just didn't think it would be coming back. And I'm not sure why Zach's releasing those things. You know, again, if it's based on hope of Netflix, that's not looking very good. You know, I would be shocked if they wanted to gamble on Zack Snyder again with the Justice League and Superman and rewake that world, right? But I'm not gonna make the video long. I think that very much covers. Oh, I want to say, but yeah, and just closing in what I was saying about then in that case, that means that James Gunn would actually be maybe the last hope for the Snyderverse. So I would say before there's a lot of condemnation against James Gunn, before you're saying things like get James Gunn out of there and stuff like that, uh, just remember James Gunn. That's what I want to talk about. His Elseworld stories, right? So James Gunn is open to doing all these Elseworld stories, right? So Gunn might be the last hope for any kind of restoration with the characters of the Snyderverse, or any hint of them existing in another world, or occasionally doing stories more similar to the Matt Reeves Batman that exists outside the actual universe that is the main primal focus, right? Primary focus. Um, and so I would say take it easy on James Gunn. Being aware of those things, seeing that he might be the only hope, for that, right? They're saying get James Gunn out. Okay, if you get James Gunn out and Zack Snyder, they don't bring him in, which they probably won't. Then what are you going to be left with? Now you're going to be taking a chance with a total different director, story, and it's probably not going to be in the best interest of the studios to reboot Justice League, DC, to Superman again. They're more than likely, guys, going to stick with James Gunn, at least give him a trial run to see how great he does. I wouldn't be surprised, though, if they put more clamps on him about toning it back on the humor. And so, but if they do that, right, that's going to even work to James Gunn's favor probably even more, because they put a few restraints on James Gunn. He's already an excellent writer, right? He's already an excellent writer and storyteller. And so what's going to happen is he's just going to end up telling a much better story, right? And they put some restraints on him. And so I just don't think that, they're going to do that. Another thing that was buzzing around why a lot of this started, got a lot of Snyder Bros hopes up, which I think is a bit unfair. They shouldn't be getting you guys hopes up on something that I don't believe is ever going to happen. Right? More likely it won't, so I wouldn't want you guys' hopes to get up. But it came from some of the interviews James Gunn was saying. I think James Gunn's, speaking in a proper tone, like saying, hey, I don't know if tomorrow's promised to me, but this is the plan so far. This is what we put together, right? And he's supposed to be speaking like that. Now, where they jumped the gun at, no pun intended, is they're saying things like James Gunn is saying that he can't commit to certain storylines, things, and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but that doesn't mean that James Gunn won't be there and still be the head of DC. That could just mean he won't be directing, right? He won't be doing every story, right? And if you're like the head guy at the studio, right, you generally won't be doing all that stuff anyway. So what James Gunn could really be saying is, hey, I'm just overworked a little bit. I'm tired. Like, I can't direct all these episodes of these or direct all these movies. I can't write and direct all. Because remember, James Gunn's been putting a lot of hats. He's been writing, directing, and putting a lot of. It's tiring, I'm sure. That doing Superman probably took a lot out of him. So to step back a little bit and let other people do other things, other directors take over other things, head up other, makes perfect sense. That doesn't mean that he's going to be relieved of duty. And in addition to that, with a lot of these interviews he's doing, and he's on the circuit and so on, right? That doesn't seem like the actions of a person who doesn't feel like they're going to be around much longer, right? I think that's like the actions of a person who pretty much knows he's not going anywhere. But, he might do take a seat back on some things, right? That might be for the best. We'll see. But that's totally different from believing that the Snyderverse is going to come back. And also, Zach, again, he needs to dial it back, because you don't want to get your fans' hopes up for this stuff. But in conclusion, guys, I think the best bet would be to bet on James Gunn, as to say, hopefully James Gunn will let us do some things related to the Snyderverse. Maybe write some stories that are very reminiscent of the Snyderverse, or maybe even some characters exist as they exist in the Snyderverse. We don't know. We will see. But again, I don't think the Snyderverse will be coming back. Sorry to say. That's all I got to say in this video, guys. Till next time, take care of yourselves and each other.